Tariq Melrose here. Today, I watched a senator defend the indefensible with the confidence of a man holding a wet paper umbrella in a storm. And somehow that wasn't the weirdest part. I got the footage and the follow-up you won't hear on cable. Subscribe now, because if truth is under attack, this is your defense line, and I've got ammo.
Republicans claim they're the party for women, then vote to gut Medicaid, defund women's health, and protect billionaires. Stay with us as we unpack the hypocrisy, expose the real war on women, and break down the GOP's destructive agenda in today's clip.
Ask for unanimous consent.
Without objection.
I'd like to enter into the record a New York Times article entitled, "The GOP plans to cut Medicaid, would save billions but leave more uninsured," budget office says. That's what we're actually outraged
Without objection,
about.
So ordered. I now recognize
Also, I
Mr.
want to
Burchett
point out that the
from
most
Tennessee.
powerful oversight Republican
You're not
Congress
recognized. Ms. Stansbury, you're not recognized.
talking
I'm
about
sorry, we're going to
fencing
Crockett.
while they're trying to cut Medicaid.
Actually, Ms. Stansbury, you're not recognized. I now recognize Ms. Crockett from Texas.
Thank you so much. It is so interesting that I just learned today at 44 years old that the Republicans are going to be the ones to save women. The same Republicans that have been, say, for women's reproductive acts, or the same Republicans that have stood for the Equal Rights Act, which would hopefully get women to equal pay, or the same Republicans that just this Congress voted for the SAVE Act, which we know would disenfranchise women from even being able to vote. But let me tell you, they are our saviors, and so I am so happy to be here today, because otherwise I would not have an idea that I had a savior in the Republicans. So let's also talk about the fact that it's only been 100 days, 100 long, terrible days for anybody that absolutely believes in reality, because what we know is that they have terminated staff responsible for enforcing federal protections against sex-based discrimination. Sounds like that's pro-women. Or they've cut funding for domestic violence survivor services. Sounds pro-woman to me. Or they've prohibited funding for research affecting women's health. That definitely sounds pro-women to me. Essentially, they closed the Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights. Again, sounds like they are fighting for us. And instead of providing oversight over these actions, Congressional Republicans have been working to execute one of the most aggressive anti-women legislative agendas in history. And yet, they're here today trying to convince the American people that discriminating against trans people is somehow the only way to protect women. This hearing has nothing to do with improving government efficiency. It's another attempt by Republicans to distract from their demonic and disastrous policies that are making it more difficult for Americans to make ends meet. So, Ms. Goss-Graves, I want to play a game. It's called Trump or Trans. You ready?
Okay.
So I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to tell me whether or not it is Trump or trans people that are responsible. You understand?
Got it.
Okay, very good. The first one, gutted medical research.
Trump.
Kidnapping Americans and sending them to foreign countries, a.k.a. deporting them.
Trump.
Driving us into a recession.
Trump.
Increasing the cost of everything.
Trump.
Waging an idiotic tariff war.
Trump.
Harming farmers.
Trump.
Ignoring the Constitution.
Trump.
Proposing to take away Social Security.
Trump.
Cutting health care.
Trump.
Firing government workers who keep our country safe.
Trump.
Encouraging an environment of hate and divisiveness.
Trump.
Thank you so much. This committee could be engaged in actual oversight of fraud, waste, abuse, and mismanagement. So let's talk about waste. Like Trump's plan to spend almost $100 million for his little birthday parade, or how he spent 25% of his first 100 days golfing, costing taxpayers tens of millions of dollars. In fact, it's a little bit over 30 million at our last estimation. In fact, President Trump is on pace to spend more than $1 billion of taxpayer dollars just on golfing. Yet the Republicans have been silent. So they must think spending taxpayer dollars on the president's golfing trips is more important than providing health care to their constituents. And when I talk about constituents, we're going to talk about the ones on this committee. So if we look at Texas 26, 39,000 children look to potentially lose their Medicaid with the cuts that they are about to vote on for reconciliation. 88,000 in Georgia 3, 68,000 in Missouri 7, 79,000 in Tennessee 2, 86,000 in South Carolina 4, 50,000 in Texas 04, 85,000 in Texas 27, and in Georgia 14, 111,000. And if you add that up just on this committee, we have 606,000 kids that are relying on us to do right by them. And instead, we playing these crazy games because we worried about 10 trans folk that are in sports right now in college. I wasn't elected to be engaged in these fights. I was elected to make sure that those kids, the kids that they are about to neglect with these terrible votes that they're about to take, I was elected to protect them and to make sure that they could grow up and have all the opportunities. But let's keep on track. Now, when we look at how much they are spending on, let's look at fraud. We could investigate whether the White House and the members of this subcommittee engaged in insider trading and market manipulation. Maybe it's a coincidence that the chairwoman brought hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of stock the day before Trump announced a 90-day pause on tariffs. But I guess we'll never know. So finally, let's talk about abuse. Like how the Republicans have let Elon steal data of Americans and his competitors to make himself even richer. Look, don't let these hearings distract you from their destruction. This is rage baiting instead of conducting oversight over the issues that Americans actually care about. And with that, I will yield.
The gentlelady's time is expired.
Madam Chair,
I now recognize.
Madam Chair, I move down to take down her words impugning you. It's saying you committed a crime.
I didn't do that.
Without objection, so ordered.
Say what?
See how. The committee
Chair.
will
Point of
suspend. The committee will
parliamentary inquiry.
suspend.
Point of parliamentary inquiry.
We're going to go with hers first, right?
Madam Chair.
The committee will suspend. The member will state the words she wishes taken down.
Well, actually, Madam Chair, the words were actually not made in a
The
timely
committee
manner.
will suspend.
Do you have the exact?
I don't have the exact words.
Okay. The words alleging a criminal act by the chairwoman.
What words?
We will suspend. We will have the.
The committee will suspend. The clerk will go over the recording with the stenographer, and the committee will suspend. The hearing will come to order. Miss Mace, I'd like to ask, we've looked at the words that were said, and it's borderline whether it's parliamentary and goes along with the rules, saying could and accusing the White House and members of this committee of crimes is borderline. So in interest of the hearing and our witnesses that are here today defending themselves against the mentally ill biological males that have invaded their sports, and in the interest of making sure that we stay on track instead of getting sidetracked into Democrats' nonstop fake accusations, I just ask, thank you for bringing up the motion and ask if you'd
Yes,
like.
Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. With that, I now recognize. She already did, Ms. Stansbury. I now recognize Mr. Burchett from Tennessee for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair Lady.
Madam Chairman, I'm sorry, it has to be withdrawn on the record.
She asked the question and she said, yes, Madam Chair.
You weren't listening, Ms. Stansbury. We handled that, and it has been removed for the record. The fake accusations of
your
criminal behavior. Oh, are you accusing also and lying? And you're continually disrupting this hearing and won't stay on track about mentally ill men trying to beat down women in women's sports. We're going to stay on track now, Ms. Stansbury, so hopefully you can go along with this hearing and stay on subject. And I now recognize Mr. Burchett from Tennessee.
Thank you, Chair Lady.
Welcome back to Tariq Melrose Vlogs, where we cut through Republican gaslighting, expose conservative hypocrisy, and drag Trumpism out into the daylight where it belongs. Today's episode is about one of the most offensive, dishonest, and insulting performances on Capitol Hill, an oversight committee hearing that was supposed to be about fraud, waste, and abuse, but turned into a sideshow about trans athletes and fake moral outrage. And let me say it clearly, If the GOP put half as much energy into helping real Americans as they do demonizing trans people and cutting essential services, this country would be in a much better place. But of course, they won't, because chaos, cruelty, and control are all they know. Let's start with the nonsense right up front. The hearing opens with the GOP attempting to enter into the record a New York Times article that makes their agenda clear. Cut Medicaid to save billions, even if it means millions more uninsured Americans. That's not fiscal responsibility. That's ideological sadism. This is the same Republican Party that spent 4 years under Trump lighting taxpayer dollars on fire through bloated military parades, personal grift, golf outings, and tax cuts for billionaires. But now they want to cut Medicaid, not because we can't afford it, but because they never wanted poor people to have it in the first place. And then the farce intensifies. Republicans fall over themselves to silence any dissent. You're not recognized, they bark, over and over, desperately trying to shut down real debate. What they really mean is, if you're not towing the GOP line, you don't get to speak. That's not democracy. That's authoritarian cosplay. And it's laughable coming from the very people who scream about free speech every time someone calls out their racism, sexism, or transphobia. Enter Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, who unleashes a verbal takedown so precise, so fact-based, and so devastating that you can literally hear the air leave the Republican room. She begins with a line soaked in sarcasm. At 44 years old, I just learned that the Republicans are going to be the ones to save women. That sentence should be studied in universities, because in one breath, it exposes the fraudulent rebranding the GOP is attempting, trying to paint themselves as champions of women's rights, all while gutting the very laws and services that protect women from violence, discrimination, and economic ruin. Let's check the receipts. Republicans have voted against the Equal Rights Amendment. They've tried to block protections for reproductive health. They passed the so-called SAVE Act, which sounds good, but is designed to strip voting access, especially from young women and women of color. These are the same people who want to imprison doctors for providing abortion care. And now they want to stand on the Capitol steps pretending to be women's saviors? Please, it gets worse. In just 100 days, these so-called defenders of women have terminated staff who enforce sex-based discrimination protections. They've cut funding for domestic violence survivors. They've banned research funding into women's health. And they closed the Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights. If that's what pro-woman looks like in Republican speak, we'd hate to see what open hostility looks like. But what are they really doing instead of actual governing, waging a full-blown culture war against trans Americans? This entire hearing is just another stage in the GOP's never-ending distraction campaign. Demonize a tiny, vulnerable population to avoid talking about how their policies are literally killing people. And Jasmine Crockett calls it exactly what it is: rage bait, manufactured hysteria to keep their base angry, misinformed, and obedient. And then comes the mic drop moment, the Trump or trans game. It's brilliant. Crockett asks a series of questions. Who gutted medical research? Who deported Americans? Who started a tariff war that tanked the economy? Who cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid? Who encouraged hate, division, and violence? The answer every single time? Trump, not trans people, not immigrants, not LGBTQ plus youth. Trump. Because the truth is, trans people didn't cause your rent to skyrocket. They didn't block your insulin refill. They didn't crash your 401k. They didn't gut your child's education funding. Trump did. The GOP did. The billionaires they serve did. But rather than face that truth, Republicans want you chasing scapegoats through the culture war fog. Instead of investigating actual fraud and abuse, Crockett points out where the real waste is. Trump's fantasy military parade that would have cost taxpayers $100 million. Or the fact that Trump spent 25% of his first 100 days golfing, costing taxpayers over $30 million. And the kicker? He's on track to burn through over $1 billion of your money just on golf by the end of it all. But sure, Medicaid for kids is the problem, right? Let's talk numbers. Texas's 26th district, 39,000 children at risk of losing Medicaid. Georgia's third, 88,000. Missouri, 68,000. Tennessee's second, 79,000. South Carolina's fourth, 86,000. Texas fourth, 50,000. Texas 27th, 85,000. Georgia's 14th, 111,000. Added up, and we're talking 606,000 children across just a handful of GOP-led districts who are about to lose health care so their congressmen can posture on trans athletes. It's sick, it's immoral, and it's un-American. And then, as Crockett dares to suggest that maybe, just maybe, some Republicans might be engaging in insider trading, the whole room explodes into procedural chaos. Suddenly, it's not about kids anymore. It's not about Medicaid. It's not about Trump's golfing bills or the stock trades suspiciously timed with Trump's tariff announcements. It's about shutting her down, erasing her words, protecting their chairwoman from a little thing called accountability, because that's what this is really about. The GOP doesn't want hearings. They want circuses. They don't want oversight. They want overreach. They don't want facts. They want Fox News sound bites. And the kicker? While Republicans were flailing about fake accusations and whining about decorum, Jasmine Crockett brought the realest truth to the table. Elon Musk, right-wing hero, Twitter troll, and billionaire brat, has allegedly accessed user data, trampled his competitors, and manipulated platforms for profit. But are Republicans holding him accountable? Nope. They're too busy fighting a pretend war against mentally ill biological males. Let's call it what it is. Republican hearings are no longer about policy. They're propaganda machines. This hearing could have been about fraud and waste, but instead it became a gender panic opera. And while they throw tantrums over trans girls' running track, hundreds of thousands of children are about to lose health care. Families are drowning in inflation. Veterans can't access services. But sure, let's spend hours yelling about college sports. This is the modern GOP, a rage engine with no brakes and no conscience. And it's time we stop pretending otherwise. So here's your reality check. The Republican Party doesn't care about women. They don't care about kids. They don't care about democracy, the Constitution, or your rights. They care about control. They care about power. And they care about keeping you angry and distracted while they rob you blind. But here's the good news. Americans like Jasmine Crockett aren't backing down. The truth is still being spoken, and people are starting to see through the noise. We need to elect more leaders who fight for facts, for freedom, for equality, and who won't sit silently while GOP cowards dress up bigotry as concern. So remember this moment. Remember who stood up for kids, for healthcare, for civil rights, and remember who spent the entire hearing trying to silence that truth. Thanks for watching Tariq Melrose Vlogs. If you're sick of the lies, sick of the spin, and ready to fight back against Trumpism and the GOP's dystopian circus, hit that subscribe button, drop a comment, and share this with someone who still believes in democracy, because this fight is just beginning, and we don't plan to lose it.